Well, good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's presentation. I'm Bob Norman, and I'd like to welcome everyone on behalf of the York County Historical Committee. This is the first of 3 lectures that we have this spring. We generally have 3 in the spring and 3 again in the fall, and the schedule of the remaining ones is in the hallway outside. Come on in, have a seat. The York County Historical Committee, in celebration of Black History Month, is proud to present today's program. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. James Cameron, or should I say, Mr. John Rollison. Mr. Cameron is an actor, historian, and author who's also been a broadcaster, historical interpreter, storyteller for Colonial Williamsburg and the Jamestown Yorktown Foundation, and a consultant and an actor in documentaries. So he obviously is well versed. He is founder and president of OHP Media Company, a multimedia company that specializes in retelling past events in an educational and entertaining way. Mr. Cameron has portrayed the character of John Rollison in many educational venues. His book, We Hold These Truths, A Conversation with John Rollison, was published in 2011. And Mr. Rollison has some copies of that book and will be happy to sign them or sell them for, or both, if you'd like to after the presentation. John Rollison was born in Yorktown in 1723. He went from a shoemaker's apprentice to become a prominent landowner and businessman in colonial York County and Williamsburg. He supported the Patriot cause during the American Revolution by supplying its military and pledging his allegiance to the new Virginia government. He has been recognized by the Library of Virginia as an African-American trailblazer. And so, without further ado, I introduce Mr. John Rollison, who's been asked here by Thomas Nelson to talk about some of the events in Yorktown in colonial days. The date today is today's date, 1780. Mr. Rollison.
Thank you. Good to see you, madam. And your name?
Miss Sundberg.
What?
Sundberg.
Sundberg. Oh. I thought you said bird. Yes. Is that German?
No, Swedish.
Yes. Well, we have many of your ilk now, of course, now that our quest for independence. And what is your name?
Harris. Carolyn.
Well, thank God for small miracles. I was beginning to think that Harris was your first name, which, of course, would literally make no sense. Where are you both from?
Grafton.
Yes. Well, I will tell you, we are very close neighbors. Very good. Good to meet both of you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We have now signed our Declaration for Independence. It has been 4 years hence. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, well, be alive, will you? Well, it is good to be amongst all of and I see our numbers are growing in measure. The word has spread. It is good to be amongst all of you this afternoon, and since I see a few familiar faces, but to most of you, I am unknown to you and your person, so allow me now to make this more formal introduction. My name is John Rollison. I am your most humble and forever obedient servant. I hail from the county of York-Poquoson, a number of miles due east of here. It is where I was born, raised, and now in the capital city of Williamsburg is where I now rear my family. I did apprentice as a young lad as a shoemaker under the tutelage of a shoemaking master by the name of Mr. Young Morland. And I do owe much to Mr. Moreland this day, because not only did he teach me the ability to make shoes and boots, but he also taught me the business of business. And it has served me well these many years. As a matter of fact, I was actually delayed upon business in the capital city, and looking upon my peace and thinking that I might arrive after the prescribed hour for the beginning of our repartee, our to and fro, I did mount my trusty steed and made it here upon quickened gallop. But it was also in such very haste that, unbeknownst to my person, I forgot to pack my more formal dress shoes, which of course I had every intentions of adorning before my entrance into this body. And so I thought, for such a dereliction of duty, that I would be forced to apologize for my inappropriate appearance. That was, of course, before I actually walked in and, well, took a look at all of you and thought it might be more necessary for you to apologize to me. But we are becoming less and less formally British and more casually American. Is that not true, sir? Yes, and I see that you have all raised that banner to its highest apex. Well, I did study under the auspice of my shoemaking master, Mr. Moreland, from the age of about 14 until I was 21. Then I was a journeyman, homing my craft and saving my pennies. And then after such duties, I ventured west into Williamsburg, where I did make purchase of a lot, cleared the land, sold the unused timber for goodly commissions, and put my establishment thereupon and lived above stairs of this very establishment. And I'm quite proud to say these many years later that this establishment has both grown and flourished, to the point where from time to time, in our better of years, before our revolutionary fervor, I had as many as 3 goodly workers who are working beneath my stead, and where I now will have 2 young lads who will be old enough to start apprenticing under my auspice, because you see now I am the shoemaking master. But I did not sit lightly upon my laurels, no. I remember something that my father taught me when I was a wee lad, still grasping tightly upon his breeches. And he used to repeat this time and time and time again. So much so that even though now I am the elder, it still rings in my mind as if he had said it but yesterday. He used to say, "John, when one is purchasing property, it is always location, location, location." And it is well known that Williamsburg has some, 17 taverns. Well, so let me take you again, sir. What is your name?
Renard Roman.
Renard?
Yes.
Huh. And where do you hail from?
York County.
Oh. You do not look familiar to me. But nonetheless, I do not know everyone. But in any event, Renard, is it? Yes, very good. Do you have a family? Ah, very good. And what do you do for a living? How do you support your family?
I work in energy, electricity.
Oh, under the auspice of Dr. Franklin. Yes, well, Dr. Franklin, of course, invented this rod thing, which, of course, protrudes from the roof and with a metal chain goes all the way into the ground, so that when a bolt of lightning hits this stick, it will go all the way into the ground, something that he calls grounding or something, yes. And how long have you been doing this?
About 10 years.
Oh, well, not that long. Did you do something before that?
Yes, I did.
And that would be?
I was in the military.
yes. Well, serving in our militia. Absolutely. So let us cut to the chase, shall we? How many acres do you own?
Half.
Half of 1 acre. What is your name, madam?
Susan Loman.
Ah, Susan, yes. I feel your pain. Yes. No disparages to yourself, sir. One can only do with what one can do. Obviously not much. Yes. My God, I have no idea how to continue. Well, I do not want to embarrass you, sir, in front of your goodly lady. I myself control some 230 acres in York, 1,000 acres in James City County. Oh, but this one is closer to your total, sir, which wouldn't take much. 68 acres in Charles City County. Oh, and I also have 9 slaves, including a manservant by the name of Thomas. And every time I see Mr. Jefferson, I remind him of that. And I have 5 children that have survived me to this very day. Now, it would have been 6, but the very, very, very first child, which was born by my goodly wife, we named her Mary. Mary Robinson Rollison. You see, my father, who was white and gentry, John Robinson, and my elder half-brother by our mutual father, Anthony Robinson, both perished in a boating accident off of Egg Island, off of York Pocosin, when I was but 14 and I had just started apprenticing under the auspice of my shoemaking master, Mr. Morland. And so you can imagine the pain and the suffering of a young lad, losing both a father and an elder brother in one fell swoop. And so my elder half-sister, whose name was Mary, and my elder half-sister-in-law, whose first name was also Mary, became secondary mothers to my person, and along with my mother helped to raise me up. Out of the mouths of babes. What is the tyke's name?
Gabriel.
What?
Gabriel.
Ah, Gabriel, yes. And is it not toting its horn? Yes. And what is your name, young lad?
Daniel,
I am very impressed, madam. And what is yours, young mistress?
Isabella,
There you have it. What is your name?
Bianca.
And where do you hail from?
Slovakia.
Ah, yes, again. There are those of many different ilks that are coming now to our new republic because of our quest for freedom. It is good to have you here and to bring your family. Yes. Now, as I was saying, and so with the losing of my father and elder brother, my half-sister and sister-in-law helped to raise me up. And so when I myself was grown and married, my wife concurred that upon the birthing of a goodly lass, that we would name that goodly lass after these 2 kindly women, which was exactly what we did. But unfortunately, tragedy did come to me even yet again. For our sweet Mary, almost upon her conceivement, came down with the cough. And it is a dreadful disease, and her being so small in stature and fragile in nature. She did succumb to this affliction within 10 days of her very conceivement. And I cannot think of a greater lasting pain to any parent or grandparent for that nature, to the losing of a child or a grandchild before they themselves have left this earthly plane. But the good Lord, in his kindness and forever mercies, did give us another lass. And this time we gave her the name Elizabeth, after my wife and her mother, Elizabeth, and after my mother, Elizabeth, and my grandmother, Elizabeth, and my aunt Elizabeth, and my grandaunt Elizabeth, and my first cousin Elizabeth, and my second cousin, twice removed upon my father's side. And then there was actually, well, in any event, you get the idea. And then she birthed me a lad, and we gave him the name of Hewlett, because that was my wife's maiden name. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Except, unfortunately, the narrative does not end there. For my wife, the aforementioned Elizabeth, in 1748, at the age of 26, she herself became stricken with the pox. And she did leave this earthly plane within 4 weeks. And then my mother, the aforementioned Elizabeth, suffered from an attack of the heart and also did give way. And so now, with no elder women to look after my still young children, to continue to teach them how to read and write and cipher, and of course the social graces. And so, with such a shortage, I did what any good man would do. I put postings on the outside of my tavern, and I put an ad in the broadside of Mr. Purdy's paper, Alexander Purdy, the Virginia Gazette, looking for a housekeeper. And lo and behold, some 3 weeks later, Miss, thank you, yes, very good. Miss Elizabeth Garrett came a-calling, and she did come well recommended. And, well, not to put a fine point to it, madam, I hope you have not found me staring unnecessarily in your direction, especially in front of your goodly man. But what is your name?
Deanne.
Ah, very good. Are you Irish or part Irish? No. German. Ah, verstehen Sie Deutsch? Ah, yeah, well, we must talk after. Verstehen Sie ein bisschen Deutsch? Ah, yes. Are you then not Catholic? No. Thank God for small miracles, yes. Well, my wife is of your ilk. She is, white, Irish, Catholic, and a commoner. But I want you to know that I did not hold any of those things against her. And eventually, sensitivities to the ladies herefore present, we did become close. And she has now also birthed me 3 children, Judith, Samuel, and Sarah, the youngest, who last November upon the 9th day has now turned 13. Going on 27, if you know what I mean. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have been asked to come here by Mr. Thomas Nelson, Jr., Esquire, a fine Virginian and one of the many Virginia signers to our grand manifesto, our Declaration for Independence. But my calling by this goodly man is because we are connected in this political fervor You see, also 3 years ago, on the 17th of April, in the year of our Lord, 1777, the aforementioned Mr. Thomas Nelson, Jr., Esquire, along with our illustrious sheriff, Mr. Dudley Diggs, of the Cole Diggs family, which I am connected, and our first freely elected governor to the independent state of Virginia, the Honorable Patrick Henry, Esquire, and yours here for you ever for present, Master John Rollison. We all did pledge and sign the York County Committee for Allegiance, pledging our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor to this cause for liberty and independence. But if I may go even further than that, my affection towards this good man is because we are connected in a family of dispositions. You see, a number of years ago, in 1757, I believe, Mr. Nelson was a witness to the will of a very prominent white merchant in Williamsburg by the name of Mr. Isaac B. And Mr. B left a third of his wealth and properties, his slaves, to his son, John Inscoe B. Well, John Inscoe B's mother is no other than Joanna Inscoe, who is my elder sister on our mutual mother's side. And so we are well known to each other. And so when I am called into duty to meet fellow citizens such as yourselves, I am honored and privileged to do so. To take whatever questions and queries that you might have, not only based on these aforementioned most trying of times, but also upon my own very personage. And let me say forthwith that you do not have to worry that I might take some form of offense upon a question in which you have put to the floor. For as my father also trained me, he used to say, John, one cannot take offense upon a question that is yet to be asked. But I know how it is when we are all communed together in like mind and like spirit, but yet we might not truly know our neighbors. And so one might be a little leery as to be the first to raise a hand and to ask a question. Well, let me put your minds totally at ease. For I have done this many, many, many times. And so, I am more willing now, much more willing now, to take the second question first. Yes, please.
Did you say you knew Thomas Jefferson?
The good man wants to know if I knew Mr. Jefferson. Well, I did not mention him, but since you have stated it, sir, yes, of course, I know Mr. Jefferson. I know many of those that used to be former Burgesses. Of course, well, Mr. Jefferson is from the county further north. He was the representative of Albemarle County, if I remember right. And him, Mr. Washington, the Lee brothers, Mr. Henry from Hanover, they would walk down the Gloucester Street heading towards the Capitol, and one could, of course, embrace them as they were heading towards the Capitol. Of course, once they reached the grounds, of course, you would have to allow them to go in to do their business. But of course, sir, could you imagine a day when you could not speak to your representatives? I mean, that is folly, sir. But the short answer to your question is yes. Thank you. Yes, madam, please.
I know that you ride between Yorktown and Williamsburg.
Well, actually, madam, the good lady made an assumption which My father always taught me never to assume. And they want the right to vote. Yes. I am primarily, madam, in Williamsburg. I have come here because Mr. Nelson has asked me to come here to greet said citizens, but normally I am upon the other side. I am in Williamsburg.
So you do not travel back and forth to visit your friends or to see folks? I was wondering what the countryside looks like between Yorktown and Williamsburg. If you could share with us what the countryside looks like.
You have never gone there yourself? It is land, madam. What else would you see?
Do many people live there? In particular, I'm wondering, I have heard that...
Again, madam, an assumption, but go ahead.
Okay, that
Woman's prerogative.
the Burrell family owns much of the property between Yorktown and Williamsburg, or some large portions of that land, and many Virginians, wealthy Virginians such as them, are moving west to more fertile land. And I understand.
Is there a question there somewhere, madam?
Yes, and I understand that there is a community of free black people living along Queens Creek. Do you know about them? Do you know them? And because one is a shoemaker, and not apprentice to a master, I'm sure, but one is a shoemaker named Morris. And I was just wondering if you knew about this community.
I have heard of Mr. Morris. I do not know him personally. Of course, as you say, he is a shoemaker, but he was not trained. To my knowledge, he was not trained under a master. You see, there are two types. There is the cobbler, who will call himself a shoemaker, and then there is the master shoemaker, which I am. For you to have the title of master, you would have had to have trained under a master. For example, those that law, they might not go to the school of King William and Queen Mary to receive their writ in law, but they might self-teach themselves and then get witnessed by at least two actual renowned attorneys that will now sign that they have read underneath them and that, yes, they should be able to practice law. But I am not a census taker, madam. I do not. And to make matters clear, it is very important. I am not Negro. I am mulatto. I am mixed blood. My mother was mulatto, as myself. My father was white. So I am mulatto. That is my race. Yes?
But because this community of free blacks are also mulattoes, and you've never heard of these neighbors.
Let me make it clear, madam. First thing, Queens Lake is upon the other side. I exist on Queens Creek, which is what I was getting ready to say before you. Yes. I do not know of this area that you speak of, but they are free blacks upon the other side of the water in Chesapeake, right here in Christopher Newport, also in York Pocosin. I do not know them all. I only know those that come towards me to do business. I am a man of labor and of business, and I deal with my family and to those that I have come in contact with here in Williamsburg. Everything else, madam, it does not matter to me, so I will know very little of it.
Thank you kindly for agreeing.
Oh, no, please. Let me take her first, and then I will come back. Yes, please.
Why did they ask you to come greet people in Colonial Queens?
I'm sorry?
Why did they ask you to be a greeter at Colonial Queens at the governor's palace? when the emergencies was coming in?
No, I did not say that. I was not a greeter at the palace. No. First thing, again, I am mulatto, so they would not have someone of my ilk there. I cannot vote, I cannot run or hold political office. I hope that these mores will eventually change now that we have a quest for independency. But unfortunately, that day has not come. What I did was, by answering this man's question, he asked me if I knew Mr. Jefferson. I told him I knew of Mr. Jefferson because he would come down the Gloucester Street to head into the Capitol. And I would, of course, if I had any mentions, I would speak to him as he was walking down into the street to go to the Capitol. And another thing that I did not state to you, sir, going back upon your question, Mr. Jefferson is not much for the oratory. He has a very high, squeaky voice. And so he tends to keep his mouth very shut. But he is very astute with the pen. Yes. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, what do you like to do for recreation?
What is recreation?
Having fun.
Having fun. Where are you from, sir?
Williamsburg.
I doubt it. Yes. I'm trying to figure how to actually answer this question, which will be to your understanding. We are at war, sir. There is no time for frivolity. But if you are asking me if I spend time with my family, with my children, yes. We play chess, we play checkers, we play lock the box. And from time to time, for me to ease my mind, I will ride my horse, Thunder. I have two good riding steeds. Thunder is the bigger of the two. He is 16 hands, quite a stately horse. And then I have Lightning, which is slightly smaller, 14 and a half to 15 hands. But generally speaking, I take Thunder and I ride my properties, and the taking in of fresh air, looking at God's mercies, that cleanses my mind and gives me ease. But understand this, sir, we are at war. I have not had anyone come into my shoemaking shop for almost 2 years. At this point, if a traveler comes through my tavern, it used to be in our better of times, for example, a traveler would come through, they would order fare, they would order drink, they would minimally have this thing that the Irish like called whiskey. And if they have a little bit more coin, they would drink wine. And if they had goodly coin, they would drink Madeira, a very thick wine. But now, there is no monies. So a person comes into my tavern, usually with their fare already in tow. They will order overbrew or underbrew beer. That is the least of cost. And instead of at least staying above stairs in one of my rooms for shelter, they certainly will not take one of my private abodes. They cannot afford it. I have 6 lots with 6 dwellings. They will come with many blankets. They will go out into the backwoods. They will find an area where the branches crisscross, and they will lay a very large blanket upon these appendages to give them protection from the above. They will lay another large blanket upon the ground to give themselves protection from the same. And another blanket which they will wrap themselves in to give their body direct protection. There is no money, sir. And because there is no monies, there is hardship and inflation. And so, do I do things with my family? Yes. And do I try to do Christian things? Yes. But there is no time just for levity and enjoyment. Yes. Please.
Are you able to raise enough food for your family at this time?
The goodly lady wants to know if I'm able to provide for my family. Yes. No disparages. That's why I have 1,300 acres, of which not all of it is cultured. Only approximately 300 plus is cultured, at which I grow corn, wheat, barley, soybeans, hemp for clothing. I also have apples and cherries and grapes, melons of various consistencies, and I have some farming animals. And the slaves are very, they have a small plot of land which I've given to them to grow their own. They are very fond of this fruit. I do not care for it much. It is about this in length, green, with a very, very short stem. And they seem to put it in many of their stews and things. It thickens their concoction. It is called okra. Yes. Now, I will tell you that when many of the sailors would come by, I would fix it a certain way. Are any of you own or operate a tavern or then again, you would not tell me anyway. What I will do, I will take about 4 husks of corn. I will take my elongated knife, and I will take the seeds, the seedlings, into the pot. I will then take my mallet and ground and crush these seedlings until it is of a powdery consistency. Then I will take goat's milk, pour some of that in there, stir it up until it is also a little pasted. I will then throw, a little salt, a little blackened pepper, a little paprika, and a little gunpowder for kick. And I will stir all of this up, and then I will take the okra and I will cover it, or what we call baste, the okra, and then deep fry it in pig's fat. It is quite a delicacy. I do not care for it much, but one must never leave monies upon the table. Yes. Yes, sir, please.
Any of your sons able to attend the college in Whittier, America?
No. No. Even though Hewlett would be able to, because you see, Hewlett is white by Virginia law. He would be able to attend, but he would not be able to attend at the same time because his father's a mulatto. You see, all my children are white by Virginia law. As a matter of fact, Elizabeth, my eldest, is married to William Cole, Jr. of the Cole Diggs family. Hewlett is married to the former Ann Richardson of the Richardson family, and I could not be more pleased. My other children, of course, are still much too young. Judith is 16, Samuel is 14, turning 15. Next year, if we are still at war, he will be able to serve in the militia. And Sarah, as I said, she is the youngest. She is 13. Yes. Have I answered your question? You are looking at me rather strangely. Very good. Please.
You talked about food. Have you eaten oysters? Are there any oyster farms off of Kosin?
Do we not have water, sir? I mean, it is, the reason why I did not mention it, sir, it is rather a given. I mean, yes, we have, look, what I will have, since, of course, now that we are at war and there are not many people coming into the tavern. The good man wanted to know if we also had oysters. Are we not in Virginia? What I will have them do is hoist a net, at which point they might gain small crabs, they might have the oysters that you speak of, and of course fish. And that is what we will serve for the fair. It is the least of cost, it is the easiest to obtain. Now in our better of years, of course, I would have more meat, but there is no reason to do such because there is hardly anyone coming to the taverns. And we are not going to consume as a family hordes of meat. So I am not going to shoot a dare. I mean, it does not make any sense. So I have small shanks of pig where I will cut the shoulder and put it upon the pan to have bacon. I will take eggs from the chickens and have that. And I will have goat's milk in the morning, or porridge, whatever was left over from the night before. But the short answer to your question, sir, is yes, we have that. But again, that is light fare, based on the fact that now we are at war. And so, whatever we gain from the net, but it is not a delicacy that I would serve every single day. Yes. Please, sir.
Do you think someday that you might free your slaves?
Well, I am against this slavery business. I believe it is a blight in front of the eyes of our most heavenliest of fathers. And certainly, if he is a creature of justice, he could not find justice in this practice. So, if the laws change where one can free one's slaves without penalty to oneself, yes, I would do so. But that time is not today, sir. It has not come. Right now, there is no way to free or manumit one's slaves. Oh, I am sorry. Just for those of you who had not heard, the good man asked me if I saw myself at any time freeing my Negroes. The short answer which I gave him was yes, but that depends upon Virginia law. Right now, there is no way to free or manumit your slaves. And let me explain to you why. In 1775, Lord Dunmore, our fourth Earl of Dunmore, had Dunmore's proclamation stating, any indentured servant or slave under the auspice of a master or a lady in rebellion could leave those masters and ladies, go to the side of the British, and find emancipation. Many have. Last year in 1779, the Parliament did a blanket proclamation stating any slave. Of course, we did not have the indentures anymore. In 1776, when they read the Declaration, those were white and indentures just walked away. So we are only left with the slaves. So the Parliament stated any slave in the colonies, of course they still call us colonials, could leave those masters and ladies, even though those masters and ladies are loyal to the king. They too can leave those masters and those ladies and go to the side of the British and find emancipation. Many have. Many from Mr. Washington, Mr. Jefferson, the Lees, the Henrys, the Wallers, the Teleferros. Many of their slaves have left. Now again, full disclosure, I only have 9, but none of my slaves have run away. Let that speak for my person. But to answer your question, yes, if the law permits it, of course I would free my slaves. But that time has not come yet. Yes?
Are any of your slaves your relatives?
No. There is no enslavement upon either side of my family. My mother's side, the Rollison side, which was actually Rolston's, the clerks are terrible, came here in 1623. My father's side, the Robinsons, oh, and I wanted to make sure to all of those of you here from, hopefully, Yorktown. Now, my father's name is John Robinson, not John Robinson, the Speaker, Attorney General, head of the Burgess before Peyton Randolph. He is not that John Robinson. But he is the first cousin to my father, John Robinson, which makes him my second cousin. So I just wanted to clear that all up. Now, I have lost my what was we speaking about again now? What was the question? Oh, yes, of course, my lineage. Well, as I said, my mother's side came here in 1623. My father's side, the Robinson side, came here in 1628. Now, just so that you understand, I will take my mother's side because that is where the mulatto comes in. Charles Rollston was an indentured servant. He came here in 1623. Now, he served 4 of his 5 years, became a prominent landowner, no disparages to yourself, and became well-known and part of the Burgess in Jamestown. Now, he begot a wife, Catherine, my great-great-grandmother. Now, Catherine and my grandfather, great-grandfather, well, his wife's name was?
Elizabeth.
No, Catherine. Ah. So, Charles Rollston married Catherine. They had a daughter, Catherine. Catherine had a relationship with a free Negro, or so the story lore goes. You know how families, sometimes they, yes. Well, in any event, she had a relationship with a free Negro. They had a child, Elizabeth. And, well, Elizabeth had a relationship with my grandfather, Mr. John Hall, who was a white ship's master. And so they had a child, Elizabeth, my mother. And Elizabeth finally had a relationship with my father, John Robinson, and I was conceived. Yes. So I hope that that has given more clarity. I hope you are somewhat educated. Yes, sir, please, in the back, all the way.
Were you considered a community leader in Williamsburg? Did you participate at all as a community leader?
I do not know. Understand this, sir. I am very careful to answer such questions. I am well versed in law. I have read all 3 books, the civil law, the common law, and the law of the admiralty. I have also read a Cook, who was a philosopher of our English common laws, and of von Pufendorf, who is the philosopher of our English laws of the admiralty. You see, considered is not a legal term. It can go either way. So, but I understand the gist of your question. Let us just say that how I feel is taken in, even though I cannot vote or run or hold political office, and I have a situation to prove it. I am a signer of the York County Committee for Allegiance. And so if my word meant nothing, well, I would not be asked to sign such said document. So I will let that be the answer and let you take it however you wish. It is not gentlemanly of to aspire such notoriety. It is up to the people to discuss you. Could you imagine if any of your politicians went out and said, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that? That is the person you need to take heed of. Please, madam.
Virginia did not have a law the way Rhode Island did, that if slaves were willing to fight in the Continental Army, and their masters would be reimbursed by the state of Rhode Island and they could serve. Virginia never had a law like that?
No. But I will tell you what they had. What she is referring to, you see, every state is different, madam. You are talking of Rhode Island. Here, they are not going to reimburse you. Maybe Rhode Island has more coin. And if that is the case, maybe they should give more to the cause. But here, madam, what one could do, for example, now Hewlett would not do that. He is part of the militia already. But let us say, if as a father I did not truly want my son to serve, what I would do is take one of my slaves, male, and now hand them over to the Continental Service. I am not reimbursed. I am now taking that slave to serve instead of my son. And that can be done. Let me make it clear. Back before our revolutionary fervor, there was no manumission of slaves, only under two auspices. One, if the slaves somehow saved the life of their master and or lady, and it was proven, in other words, witnesses were drawn, and the master or lady put up a bond of 25 pounds. To give you an idea what that means, the average person only earns 30 to 32 pounds for the whole year. So it is not a shortened measure. So, if that can be proven, and the bond is put aside, the court could decide in favor of that slave. That slave could be emancipated. Another way is if that slave tattled upon an insurrection, of course, before it was to happen. Again, witnesses would have to be drawn, a bond would have to be levied, and then, if that ended up being the case, they were again manumitted. But understand this, madam. One, only they are manumitted. If they have a family, that family stays in Virginia. And they had to leave Virginia within 60 days. If they did not leave Virginia within 60 days, they were remanded back to their master or lady and had to give back the monies. That would be the only way. Now, your state is different. Your state is willing to pay the master or the lady for this said duty. That is not Virginia, madam. That's why I said you were partially right. I think I have time for a few more questions, please. Yes, sir, please.
I want to know about the state of the congregations, not just Catholic, but Anglican and Episcopal and Protestant, such as Baptist. With the state of war, how are they able to function, and do they have a leader? Have they gone off, or what are the pastors saying?
You realize, sir, that you have asked me 5 questions. I would expect that from a goodly lady, but what is your name?
Tom.
Nickname for Thomas?
Thomas Bailey.
Very good. Where do you hail from?
From Newport News.
Christopher Newport.
Yes, sir.
I am from the other side, York Pocosin, but hopefully you already know that since I said that in the beginning. Sir, I am not a man of the cloth. I am not attuned to the Ecclesiastes. I will tell you that now that we have cited our Declaration for Independence, it is much a declaration for freedom for religion. So now, a person, man or lady, can choose to pray, to homage themselves, to humble themselves under any deity in which they see themselves connected. And let me say even further, even those that do not hold an Ecclesiastes, even they have now a new republic. I have seen good men do horrific things. I have seen bad men do Christian things. It is not for me to judge. It is for He, the Creator of all things, to judge. But I will tell you of one that I know of, because now one can choose whatever, as I said. One can still choose to be Anglican, even though if they are still Anglican, they are being watched for obvious reasons. But they could be Presbyterians, they could be Swedenborgians, Mennonites, Lutherans, Quakers, whatever. But we have one here. He is a slave of all things. His name is Gowan. Gowan Pamphlet. He calls himself Gowan Pamphlet. He does not know his last name, but he always walks around with his Bible. He says that that is the pamphlet of our most heavenliest of fathers, so he calls himself Pamphlet. He is a Baptist. If any of you are Baptists, I am sorry. But I do not know, what faith are you, sir? Baptist. Well, you can always tell. Well, sir, then you must know of this Gowan fellow. He is also a Baptist. And my God, his ministry starts about 9 upon the clock. And 4 in the afternoon, he is still talking. My God, they can talk forever. Even God rested upon the 7th day. But he does, to his credit, he has quite a flock, well over 200. Quite a situation of all races. He has natives, he has mulattoes, as myself, he has Negroes, he has whites. And so he has grown quite well. And he has the permission of Miss Vobe, who is his mistress. She owns him. She owns the King's Arms Tavern. As a matter of fact, they wanted her to change the name. Of course, us getting away from such mores. But she stood fast and said, no, everybody knows the tavern by that name. They counted and said, well, everybody knows your name. Yes, that might be true, but they know the name of the tavern that much more. So he is a Baptist minister, calls himself such. But we now are fighting for as much freedom for religion so that a person can pray under their own auspice, under their own guidance, under their own God. Whether that be from the Ecclesiastes or the Quran or from the holy texts of the original Hebrews, one should be able to pray upon their own justification. So that's the best way I know to answer your question. I am not one to just talk about a subject that I really am not astute upon. That is more for our women folk. But that's the best way I can answer your question, sir. I hope it has been sufficient. Yes, madam, please.
In light of the signing of the new declaration, what would you say are your greatest hopes for your children?
The goodly lady wants to know, now that we have cut our independency, what is the greatest hope for my children? Well, it goes even further than my children, madam. It goes for all of us as a newfound republic. I study war so that my children can study trades, so that their children can study art and culture, so that their children can study languages. That is my hope, that where it matters not where you begin, but it matters all where you end. My father taught me, he used to say, John, remember this. And if you remember this, it will serve you well. Only a fool knows everything, but a wise man knows nothing. And I have carried those continents to me to these very days, and it has served me well. I hope I have answered your question. Very good. I have time, I will say, for 2 more questions. Yes, please.
You're very well educated. What were the rules on education for mulattoes versus for slaves? I believe slaves were not allowed to be trained to read or write, but what were the rules in this area?
Well, again, sir, again, my father's continence carries so true based on our discussions. Why would you assume that? Let me ask you the question, sir. If I take my slaves to church, assuming, of course, this is before our revolutionary fervor, how would they be able to read the Bible if they cannot read? By law, sir, they must be able to read. How would they be able to read the Bible, the most holiest of books, if they cannot read? There is no law, sir, that states a slave can or cannot read, write, or do mathematical principles. There is a law that states they must be able to read because of the Bible. They do not have to be taught how to write, and so on and so forth. But understand this, again, we are in Yorktown. In Williamsburg, up to 1775, just some 5 years ago, there was the Bray Schools. The Bray School was a school for free and enslaved Negroes and mulattoes. It was run by Miss Wager. That's right, Miss Ann Wager. Unfortunately, Miss Wager suffered an attack of the heart and did expire in 1775. And since we were moving away from the crown, and it was the crown through the Anglican Church that was paying for this school, of course, the funds eventually dried up. But there was a school there, sir, for free and enslaved Negroes and mulattoes. Now, if you are of your race, I assume that you are white, sir? Yes, well, you see, that's why I wanted to make sure. You might be native, you might be mulatto. My brother looks just like you. He is mulatto, but he looks like you. I look like me. The situation is, sir, as long as the master says that they can attend, they can attend. It is, of course, still with the permission of the master or the lady. But there is no law that says they cannot be taught. Again, all these assumptions. I am glad I am here with you this day to give you some true education. I will take 2 last questions. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
You do not have to call me sir. I have never been knighted.
It is my understanding that there is another man of color in Williamsburg who owns a store, and I'm curious, in your time, how common was it for people of color, those who can trace their lineage to Africa, to own property and run businesses?
First thing, sir, let me take your last premise first. I cannot trace my lineage to Africa. I can trace my lineage to Scotland, but I cannot trace it to Africa. I am not African, I am American. Now, how common or uncommon is it for a mulatto or a Negro to own a store? Did I not say that I have 1,300 acres? Again, no disparages to yourself. Did I not say that I have 8 lots in Williamsburg, 6 with dwellings? I also have a large established tavern with 5 bedrooms above stairs. 2 I have siphoned off for my own family. The other 3 I lease out, just like all the other tavern keeps. Sir, I will give you the title. As long as one can afford to make the purchase, as long as one can afford to pay the taxes, you are free. As long as you are free, you can own property. I will say this, and I will understand if nobody here will admit to it. Are there any Irish men in here? Oh, yes, well. Now, if you will stand up, sir, I am not making an example of you, but I am making an example of you. Now, you are Irish. I will assume that you are not more, that you are white, are you not? Because there are more that are Irish as well. But I will assume, sir, for this, that you are white, are you not? Yes. Very good. Being Irish, are you also Catholic? Yes. How would I guess? Now, this man is white. I am mulatto. Which one has more, assuming that he is dressed better than... Who holds and yields more power?
You do.
And why do I yield more power?
You own property.
Say that again.
You own property Catholic.
It is both. It is because I am not Catholic. The only, oh, you may sit, sir. Thank you. Are you from Maryland?
No.
Oh. Well, that is where the Irish and the Catholics are most domiciled. They're in Maryland. The capital there, of course, is Baltimore, named after Lord Baltimore, who himself was a Catholic. Now, as long as you are not Irish, Catholic, Hebrew, Mohammedan, or Moor, or African, you can only own 1 and 20 acres. Again, no disparages. You can only own 1 and 20 acres because 25 cultured acres or 40 uncultured acres gives you the franchise, which you are denied. You can only own 2 lots because 5 cultured lots or 8 uncultured lots, again, gives you the franchise, which again, you are denied. Again, I am only making a point. I am not trying to. I own 1,300 acres. He can only own 1 and 20. I have 8 lots all told. He can only own 3. Neither one of us can vote. Neither one of us can run or hold political office, even if our countrymen see us in such an esteemed position. But who has the greater advantage, he or I? I will take one last question. Yes, madam, please.
It was my understanding
Again, here you go. Go ahead.
that if you were male,
if you were the Church of England, if you own property outside of Williamsburg, and you own property inside Williamsburg, that you were allowed to vote.
No. That right was taken away in 1668. It was reaffirmed or upheld, that is the legal term. I am sorry if I use it and none of you know law. It was upheld in 1705, 17 years before I was born. No, madam. If you are Negro, mulatto, Mohammedan, Moor, you cannot vote, you cannot run or hold political office.
You stand sort of in between both of them because you own land and you are male.
Yes.
And you,
I'm glad you noticed that.
and you are from Virginia.
Yes.
And you fall into all of the criteria for voting except that you're mulatto.
Yes.
So because you're mulatto, and you, even though you have all of the rest of these criteria, oh, I know. We'll
Yes.
forgive you. But you still are not allowed to vote.
Yeah. Let me end this way. Maybe this will make it all the clear. Everyone knows that there is slavery here, correct? Is there anyone who doesn't know? Very good. Now, how many of you here own slaves? You all must be like him, very poor. And I find that very surprising because most men would say they are slaves to their women. How many of you here would never own slaves? Raise your hands. Would never own slaves. Let me tell you a story. It happened 7 years ago, 1773. It was before our revolutionary fervor. And I was in the city of Williamsburg heading east. I was on the Gloucester Street heading from the college towards the Capitol. And about mid-range there, I heard these horrific screams. And upon further checking, further investigation, and even further illumination, I saw that in front of the Treasurer's office, which is next to the Capitol, they were having one of their normal slave auctions, which of course they did twice a month during the summer solstice. And there were two slaves there. There was a woman, scantily clad, manacled in such a fashion, feet chained. Now, that situation was sickening enough, but there was also a young lad there. He was no more than maybe yay in height, equally manacled, feet equally chained, screaming to the high heavens for what was obviously the child's mother. Not understanding what was going on, certainly not understanding the language, and in total fright. And also what was self-evident, they were getting ready to sell those two poor souls separately. Now, I did not need any more slaves, and I certainly did not want any more slaves. But the situation did touch me, and I did jump into the fray. And I did make purchase of these two poor souls. Now, the woman has become quite a seamstress, has she not? Has she not? Yes. From time to time, I will lease her out. I will earn a commission. She will earn tips. The young lad is one of those two lads, along with my son, who I will start teaching the trade of shoemaking. Once he is fully vested, I will again lease him out. I once again will earn a commission. He will earn tips. Now, let me ask all of you people, all Christians, say one. Let's assume that you were in the capital city that day, and you came across this sight. What would you have done? Oh, and just to make it and take it off the table, especially for you, for the one day only, you have my monies. Obviously, the way you are all dressed, you are all very poor. What would you have done? Would you have allowed them to have been sold separately, or would you have purchased them to keep them whole? All those that would have purchased them to keep them whole, raise your hands, raise them high. Yes. Why am I not surprised? Well, let me give you another scenario. Let us say it is 100 years from now. Nay, let's put it to rest. 200 years from now. We are all below ground. Our abode is in total disrepair. Broken timber, broken ambers. And lo and behold, someone has purchased your property and intends to rebuild upon it anew. And they go and they get a deed for your said property. And in the excavation, lo and behold, they come across your ledger books. And they see on such and such a day that you did make purchase of these two poor souls. Will they know the circumstances in which you purchased them? Will they? No. But yet, will you not be labeled a slave owner? Yes. I see you did not shout to the reverends on that one. As I have said, judge not, so ye shall not be judged. Once again, I have seen good men do horrific things, and I have seen what so-called bad men do Christian things. I hope that when I leave this most heavenliest of spaces, and I am in front of the gate, seeking entrance into our Father's most heavenliest of kingdoms. And I would hope that when I meet him, he will see the continence of my soul and the goodness in my heart and give me entrance into his kingdom. But whether he does or he does not, it will solely between he and he only, and no one else. As long as someone has not built a roof to give my body protection at no commissions to themselves, a floor to give my feet both comfort and protection at no cost to themselves, fare to give my body subsistence at no commissions to themselves, I could not care less what someone thinks of me. There will always be those that disparage you. You have a handsome lady. You have excellent horses. You have an excellent family. You have an excellent wife. It goes on and on and on and on. My father taught me, and I will leave you with this last one. He said, son, remember this. There will always be those that wish to put you down. But no matter how far you go down, that will be the more sweet as you arise. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure being amongst all of you this evening. And in closing, as I always like to say, God bless all of you. God bless your families. And God bless the fighting men and women camp followers in the field. I remain your most humble and forever obedient servant, John Rollison. Safe journey and good evening. Thank you.